Hey everybody, Ed Homewood. I hope everyone's doing well today. I hope you find today's video fascinating. I did. It's an interesting piece. We're going to talk about the SMSL D200 desktop DAC preamp. So please do me a favor, sit back, relax, and we'll get going on this review. Well, before we continue, real quick, big shout out to the folks at Aoshita for providing the D200 to me for review. Now, they've not seen the video in advance and they had no influence over this review in any way, shape, or form. And when I'm done, the unit will go back to them. However, in the spirit of full disclosure, there will be an affiliate link for this product in the pinned comment and in the video description. So now let's continue on. Well, on SMSL's website, they described the D200 as a desktop DAC preamplifier, and it is that, but it's a little bit more because I tested it differently. Now it sells for $319. I'll put specs up here for those who care. For me, the takeaway on this is the DAC chip that they use. Now we're used to seeing chips from ESS, their Sabre chips. We're used to seeing AKM, the Velvet Sound chips, Burr Brown, TI, Wolfson, Cirrus Logic. This is a different, or maybe a company that's new to us in the DAC world, in the audio world, Rohm. Now, Rohm is an interesting company. We'll talk about them in just a second. But as you can see from the specifications, it's got good specs. It'll do on USB 32-bit 768 and DSD 512 and PCM, like all PCM DACs, 24192. It does do Bluetooth, and it's got all of the beautiful Bluetooth codecs. I didn't test that because I don't really do Bluetooth. But it's got some good goes intas and goes outas. And we're going to take a look at the front. We're going to take a look at the back. I'm going to open it up and we're going to dig around inside. But before we do that, let me tell you a little bit about the company Rohm. So Rohm Semiconductor. It's an interesting company. I love the name, R-O-H-M. So they started out as a resistor manufacturer in Kyoto, Japan in 1958. Well, how do you measure resistance? Resistance R, you measure it in ohms, O-H-M, so hence their name. That company has expanded. Now they do semiconductors, IC chips, diodes, transistors. They do automotive, consumer, industrial. They're known for their power management solutions, and also, obviously, DACs now, they're starting to earn a good reputation with that. The first product they brought out, DAC chip, that I remember seeing was the BD34301 EKV, and then this is the latest version, the 34352 EKV. And it's an interesting product, and I wanted to listen to it because, again, I've heard all of the other DAC manufacturers, and I wanted to see what these guys had to offer. So we'll talk about that in the summary, but before we do that, let's do this. Let's look at the front, let's look at the back, let's go inside. I'll tell you, a little bit about who this DAC is for, how I tested it, and give you my final thoughts. Well, here we are looking at the front panel of the D200. As you can see, I think industrial design, SMSL does a very good job with this. It's all cast aluminum, the faceplate is. I like the scallop here. The encoder doesn't have much feel. It's got a little bit of a detent as you rotate. It's got a little bit of a click to it. And of course, you push for things. Right now, the unit's powered off. I'm gonna use the remote control for almost everything. So power, menu choices, function button, you've got volume if you're using it as a pre-out, mute, or this exits out of the menu system. So we're going to go ahead and power the unit up from the remote control, and it'll go through its wake-up sequence. Now it'll come out to the main display. Now one of the things that I find a little bit annoying is this is the only display. It always shows your volume. It doesn't show sample rate. It doesn't change. That shows USB in. This shows sample rate, shows PCM. I wish that those displays would take over the volume display when you're using it as a preamp. I don't know, just my particular thing. So now we're going to go into the menus, and you can see we've got inputs, and we can choose USB-C, Bluetooth, optical coax, and back around to USB-C. We can go to outputs. We can have all the line out, both XLR and single-ended, or just balanced or just unbalanced. I like to use it on all the outputs because I use the line out to go to the sub. The clock in, we had the G1 master clock here, so if I want to use the internal clock, obviously that's the choice. If I want to use an external clock, then I can. There's no clock connected now, so it doesn't ask you what 10 megahertz or whatever. Now, PCM filter, there's some interesting stuff here in the PCM filter side. We have what's called a slow roll off, Let me go there. Slow roll off, sharp roll off, or we can have the filter off. Now, one thing I did notice, and I don't know if it's unique to this unit or they're all the same, when you go to filter off, the output level drops significantly. The volume out of this into your amplifier drops off literally like by half. So most of the time I used it in the slow roll off mode. Now we come down here and we have the DSD filter, which is narrow, normal, or wide for DSD decoding. I'm not sure I ever heard a difference, honestly. And then sound color, and this is where it gets kind of interesting. We have the sound color 1, which they call 5.6M, sound 2, 5.6M, sound 3, 11M. Let me go in there. Sound color mode, and I don't know what any of those numbers mean. I did hear a difference, and I thought that sound color 4, for at least for me, sounded best of all, so I left it in that mode. Then we go to the preamp mode, and then we can have it be a preamp. We can have it be fixed chosen. Now this is an interesting option. You can have it be fixed to whatever the last volume setting you had, not full volume. It could be half volume, 3/4 volume, whatever. You can set the volume here and then choose to have it fixed at that point, or you can have it fixed at max, which means you're going to get 4 volt out or 5 volt out on the XLR and 2.5 volts out on the line level. So nice little warning, turn the amp down. So I just used it as a preamp on the desktop and fixed max in the big room. And then you have function key. Now the function key is on the remote control. You'll see a little FN here. And you can have it set to handle your outputs, turn on Bluetooth, or switch phase. So with the function key you can do that. So again, then we can go audio phase, we can invert phase. I don't hear much of a difference with that. Unless the track itself is inverted, you're not going to hear it. Language, we can choose between English, simplified Chinese, and I think regular Mandarin, or I don't understand Chinese languages, so I'll leave it at English. And then dimmer, we can set it so the display is always on. We can change the option there. We can go 5 seconds, 10, all the way out to, I think, a minute. And then it comes back to all the way on all the time. I just left the display on all the time. And then brightness, you can obviously set the brightness to adjust the dimness of the display. I found that 70% was fine for me most 90% of the time. And we can reset it all back to the factory, and we come back around to inputs. So now that we're done with that, let's look at the back, and then we'll go around. We'll go open it up and see what's inside. Here's the back of the D200. We've got master power switch, IEC power socket, Bluetooth antenna, USB input, master clock input on a BNC connector, Toslink in, coax in, balanced out on right and left, and single-ended out. Now, one of the things that SMSL does that is completely annoying to me is they don't indicate white and red, left and right. And you've got to look at the display on the back, and it is so faintly silk-screened on this silver background that it is really hard to see. I just wish they'd make the right side red and the other side white like everybody else on earth does. But anyway, nicely laid out, good connectors. This thing had good connectivity. I used the balance going into the Cambridge amp, and I used the single-ended going into my subwoofer under the desk. Really, really good. Now, let's open it up. Well, here we are looking at the inside of the D200. As you can see, nice big power supply. It is a linear power supply. It is surrounded by some very nice Nichicon gold capacitors, so good power supply capacitors. Nicely laid out. This is the back of the unit. This is the front of the unit, just to give you an orientation. There are the OPA 1612 op amps. That's our XMOS processor. There's our Qualcomm USB processor. This is a processor that, by the way, the XMOS handles the USB input, handles all of that. It's the traffic cop for USB. This is the main processor. It gives you your displays, accesses this is the Rohm chip, accesses, filter options, and so forth like that within the menuing system, and kind of the administrator of everything. Again, there's our Rohm chip, surrounded by some very nice capacitors. That's a Rubicon capacitor. This is very well laid out, very well designed, very well executed. SMSL does a very good job with the production and the engineering of it. Beautiful die-cast chassis. I think at $319, this thing's a real good deal and a good performer as well. So anyway, that's a look at the inside of the BD200. Let's button it up and finish up this video. So This DAC is interesting, and I tested it in a number of different ways, and as you saw in the B-roll, I used it on my desktop. I wanted to kind of really figure out who or what is the best use of this particular product, or how to get the maximum out of it, and I found, I think, 2 different ways. So really quick for testing on the desktop, as you saw in the B-roll, I used it with the PL200T CD transport, the G1 master clock, and then the Cambridge Audio MXW70 amplifier. I did for a time try it with the IEMA A20 amplifier, and it was a good combination. For speakers, I used my Philharmonic True Mini monitors and the Acoustic Quality Labradors. And for source, it was Artivana streaming from my PC, going straight into the DAC, and I did use the PL200 CD transport for that. And I got really good results. This is a cool piece on the preamp, and I mentioned it when we looked at the back. I was able to use the balanced out into the Cambridge Audio amplifier and the single-ended out to run my subwoofer that's under my desk, and that gave me a lot of really good flexibility. And I did have it connected to the master clock, and I did use the master clock with both the DAC and the CD transport at the same time, and I'll kind of talk about my thoughts on that when we get to the summary side. Now, because I wanted to really get a good listen to this Rohm DAC chip, I did put it in the big system, and I did have the whole stack, the PL200, the G1 master clock, and the D200 in there, and I did use it with the advanced Paris A12, which of course is my daily driver. I did run it with the Black Ice F360 preamp and the Pearl Acoustics 7040 stereo amplifier. For the speakers, I used my Magnapan LRS Pluses. I used the Bucart P300s, which you just saw a review of. That was a nice combination. I did for a time try it with the Bucart E50s, which I have in for review. And I did use it with my big Wharfdale Diamond speakers. For sources, always Artivana streaming through directly into the DAC. I did not use any reclockers on it for review. I did play around with it a little bit later here on the desktop. I did put a the PO100 Pro little DDC reclocker from SMSL on it, just to try it out, just to see if I heard a difference with the master clock and everything else. And again, I'll talk about that in the summary. And I did use the PL200 CD transport in the big room along with the master clock. So what I was able to determine is really kind of who this unit is for and maybe its best use case. So who'd benefit from having this unit? I think a lot of people would. I used it on the desktop. I thought it was wonderful. I thought it was a great combination with the PL200T. A nice cosmetic, as you saw in the B-roll, nice cosmetic with the G1 master clock. We'll talk about the master clock in just a second. But as a digital front end on my desktop running with the Cambridge Audio amp or the IEMA A20, that was a good combination too, and a little bit easier to budget the IEMA than the Cambridge Audio, which is I think $600. It performed really well on the desktop. It was good as a preamp. It had good performance. It had good sound quality. I thought good resolution. CD sounded wonderful on it. It was a really nice, convenient piece. The remote control made it easy. And on the desktop, the shortcomings of the display were much less apparent than they were in the big room, as I mentioned when we talked about the front panel. So on the desktop, really good. Again, for a dedicated digital front end, it's a good DAC, it's a good preamp, it's got good connectivity. I didn't try the Bluetooth, but I'm sure it's fine. And with the PL200, it's a nice cosmetic looking little stack. It's really pretty, quite pretty. Now, in the big room, I used it only as a DAC, and I fed it from Artivana. I did run through a USB isolator. I did, for a time, use the SMSL PO100 Pro little DDC reclocker to see if I could hear a difference. And it was marginal. Same with the G1 clock. And again, when I get to the summaries, we'll talk about that. And I did, most of the time, used it just straight as a DAC, USB straight into it, from an isolator straight into it. And I did try it with the Singzer SU2 just quickly to see if I was going to hear any big difference. And again, we'll talk about that in the summary. But overall, I was really very impressed with this piece. SMSL builds nice product. Cosmetically, I think it's quite attractive. And the DAC, the display could be a way better piece in the big room. And again, I mentioned that in the front panel portion of it. So I thought this is really good. Again, if you want a simple piece, kind of a little bit of a Swiss Army knife, and all you're going to do is digital on your desktop or for a second system or a small system or a dorm room system, this would be great, paired up with a nice little amp like the A20 from IEMA, or you could use the Fozzy ZA3 if you wanted to. I like the A20 a little better. that would be a great system. So now let's do this. Well, actually, let me tell you, for the music, I'm not going to talk about individual songs. I just use tracks off the Old Guy Hi-Fi Test Tracks Volume 2 playlist, and there's some good stuff on there. And give them a listen. There is some really interesting music there, and this thing performed quite well. So let's do this. Why don't I give you my final thoughts on this thing, and we'll get out of here. Well, the D200. I was mightily impressed with this thing. On the desktop, it performed quite well. Very good, clean sound. I think... And again, this had the Rohm chip does have a different sound than most of the mainstream DACs you've heard of. So it is definitely a different flavor from ESS and AKM, which is what almost all of us are most familiar with. Really good detail in it. Nice depth of sound, and I'll talk about the big room separate from the desktop, because in the desktop it's all near field, so you don't have any room, boundary, issues or anything like that. Really good detail, good bass response. It dug deep. I thought it provided the right signal, for the rest of the chain to perform very well. I think it hits a middle ground between ESS and AKM. I tend to find ESS chips to be a little strident and a little glary, and I think it has to do with the oversampling that ESS does. They're not bad chips, and if you like them, you like them. That's wonderful. I think they can be fatiguing for me. AKM tends to be my go-to for Delta Sigma based DACs because I just love their velvet sound. I think that 2-chip solution they use, the 4499, 4191, I think offers the best. It's kind of it is a hybrid multi-bit switch resistor, almost like an R2R DAC, but on a chip. It has the measurements of Delta Sigma, but it has the smoothness much closer to R2R. Now, the Rohm chip gets pretty close to the AKM. I think it's maybe, like I said, I think it hits the middle ground between the two. It's got a little bit of the detail or a little bit of the better high frequency energy than the AKM does. The AKM tends to sound warm where the ESS tends to sound cold. This has a bit of a coolish sound to it, but it's not bad. I mean, I'm actually suitably impressed. It is closer to the AKM than it is to the ESS. I guess that's the best way to put it. And the big room on the big system with all that resolving gear, it performed really well. Again, good full range response, good bass, good mid-range, excellent detail, really good imaging capability. I thought it imaged quite well. Good deep image, good center focus, good width, good height, very clean, very clear. And again, I think it rides somewhere closer to AKM, but has a few of the characteristics of ESS, which kind of the positive characteristics of it. So really nice detail, good image placement, and so forth and so on. Again, lots going to depend on the recording. There's lots going to depend on the equipment after the DAC, amps, preamps, all that kind of stuff, speaker systems, things like that. Now, for the G1 clock, on this particular device, I don't know, and on the PL200T CD transport, because I use the clock on that as well, I don't know that I really heard much of a difference. Now, I'm going to do a full review of the G1 clock because I do have some big expensive DACs in here where there is a difference to be heard, and we'll talk about that when I do those reviews. But the G1 on the D200 or the PL200T, I honestly don't know if I really heard much of a difference. I may have, and it was so subtle. If there was, I could be imagining it too. It was just infinitesimal, just really maybe a little better image focus, just ever so slightly. And it could be the time of day, it could be my blood pressure, it could be the atmospheric pressure outside, it could be, how many cups of coffee I had that day. I don't know that I can absolutely definitively say I heard much of a difference. So we'll leave it at that. So again, the overall Rohm chip, clean, very nice sounding, good. It's got a little bit of that warmth, and it, like I said, it splits. It splits the difference between AKM. You know what? It sounds like a Wolfson DAC chip with a little bit more detail. So maybe a little bit more like a current Cirrus Logic. I think it's a little better detailed than a Burr Brown or a TI. It's not hyper detailed or strident like an ESS. I think, again, probably in right around that Wolfson chips. It's got a little bit of a kind of a lushness. It's got that similar soundstage that Wolfson chips give you, which is great, but a little better detailed. Now, not as ultimately the minuscule detail you'll get out of a kind of a high-end AKM DAC, but really good. And at $319, this thing is a really, really compelling device. So I give this a high recommendation. If you're looking to do a digital front end desktop, if you're looking for a really good DAC that has some flexibility, even in your main system, this DAC chip, this Rohm DAC chip, and the execution in this D200 is really quite well. So anyway, those are my final thoughts on the D200. We're going to talk about the SMSL D1 DAC at $80. You guys will remember the SMSL SU1. That was a darling. Everybody loved that piece. That was an $80 DAC from, maybe a year or more ago. That used an AKM 4493S chip in it. This uses the Rohm BD34352 EKV chip in it, just like this, although obviously much different layout, board configuration, and component cost. This is a far better unit, no question. But this is fun. If you need something inexpensive, just a quick little DAC, small desktop system, whatever, maybe drive a nice little tube headphone amp or something like that. This does really well. It's got a touch screen so you can change your inputs. On the back side, we've got the line output. We've got coax SPDIF-in, Toslink SPDIF-in, and USB-in. But what I think is interesting, it's got a second little USB-C connector on there, and you can run a dedicated 5-volt power supply on it. And I did. I used a little 5-volt switch mode power supply I had laying around. And I do think when it takes the power off the USB along with the data off the USB, a lot depends on how powerful the USB output is on the computer you're connecting it to. If it's a laptop, it's usually not very powerful. I found by using even just a little inexpensive switch mode 5-volt power supply that the dynamics were better. So I do recommend doing that. This thing sounds nice. Now, it does have that same Rohm DAC chip, so it will do 32-bit 768 and DSD 512 on USB and on PCM 24192. It has decent dynamic range. Really interesting little piece. I think from a sonic standpoint, does it match the D200? No, the D200 is a much more sophisticated piece, but it worked really, really nice. Now, I used it as a DAC when I was doing the IEMA review, the T20 tube preamp and the A20 amplifier. I used this as the DAC, as one of the DACs I used to test it, and you know what? It sounded really nice. It is, like I said, it is somewhere between ESS and AKM. It's a little bit cooler than AKM, but far less glary than ESS. So it's, again, very much like a Cirrus Logic chip. I think, if you're looking for an alternative to the SU1, you want a little bit less warmth or maybe a little cooler sound, this would be a great choice. I really did think this at $80. This is one of those little giant killer pieces. It performs quite well. I think it compares favorably with any DAC up to and around $200, as long as you're not looking for a ton of features or goes in as it goes out. If you're just basing it on performance, this thing is a wonderful little piece, no question about it. So who's this unit for? Well, someone looking for an inexpensive little small form factor DAC, little desktop system, maybe a dorm room system, maybe just a little headphone system like, using it with a Duke Audio E2 headphone amp, or like the X-Duo TA20 Plus, you just need a DAC to feed that, and that the headphone amp is going to be the main driving source, and you don't have a ton of space. This would be a great choice for that. Really, really good. And I think it would work really well if you're doing a second system or kind of keeping it on a budget. If you plugged a Weem Mini into it, or maybe an Arylic S10, little inexpensive, $100-ish streamer into this, that would be a great combination. I really thought this thing sounded good. I thought it performed well. I was very impressed. For $80, it's a great little piece. Well, before we wrap things up, big shout out to the folks at Aoshita for providing me the D200 for review. They didn't see the video in advance. They had no influence over the review in any way, shape, or form. And when everything is all said and done, this is going back to them. And in the spirit of full disclosure, there will be an Aoshita affiliate link to this product in the pinned comment and in the video description. Now, for the SMSL D1. SMSL was kind enough to send this to me, and there will be an Amazon affiliate link in the pinned comment and video description if you're interested in purchasing this. Well, a little bit of a bonus review, a twofer, as they say. Well, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you'd consider giving me your subscription and a like and ringing the bell to get notified next time I put a video out. Your subscription would count a lot. It's free to give it to me, and you can take it away if you don't like what I'm doing, but having a growing subscriber count shows manufacturers that I've got a good channel, we've got a good community, and they're more willing to obviously give me products to review so we can enjoy them together, learn about them together, and have some fun with it. So please consider subscribing. I would like to take a moment and express my gratitude to my current channel members and current subscribers. Guys, your support is invaluable. Thank you very much. As I mentioned, there, in full disclosure, there will be an Aoshida affiliate link for the D200. That gets a big thumbs up for me. And there will be an Amazon affiliate link to the D1 DAC in the pinned comment and in the video description if you are interested in acquiring either of those pieces. There will also be a channel membership link in the pinned comment and in the video description if you are so inclined. There's some additional affiliate links in the pinned comment, or in the video description, excuse me. There will be a link to the Old Guy Hi-Fi Test Tracks Volume 2, both title and Cobuzz link there. Comment, let me know your thoughts. Oh, you know what? There's a link to the community post playlist. There's some great music there. Please check it out. There's some wonderful stuff there, stuff I've discovered and have used in reviews. But comment, let me know your thoughts. I think this, actually at 319 bucks, I think this is punches above its weight class. It really does. It's very good. And for something inexpensive, maybe even up to twice the price, that little D1 performs quite well. I was impressed with this ROM chip a lot, and hopefully if you give them a listen, you will too. But let me know your thoughts on that. I think I've covered all the bases. 2 DACs in 1. Yeah. Please consider liking. Please consider subscribing. Please comment. If you want to, you can follow me on Instagram. My name is Ed Homewood. This is the Old Guy Hi-Fi channel, and as I always tell you, please take some time in your day, put on some music you love, your favorite stuff, sit back, listen, and relax. You gave me a lot of time today, and I'm grateful for it. Thank you so very much. I really hope you have a wonderful day.